This is nothing more than a batch of simplistic interactive flashcards. That said, for youngsters who are just starting out on their quest to learn math, this is a decent way for them to practice. Now, if you were born after 1985, you're probably wondering why they just don't use a computer to do some math problems. Back in the dark technological days of the 1970s, this wasn't an option. If you wanted to practice math problems, you either had to write the problems out by hand, do them, then check them yourself, or you had to have an involved parent who was willing to do flashcards. In some small way, basic math was the first step towards parents delegating responsibility to technology. There are two gameplay settings here: tables and random problems. On the tables section, once you select your desired discipline, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, you get the chance to select a base number, 1 through 9. Every problem in this set will have the number you select, allowing you to focus on one subset of numbers. Once you complete all 10 problems, you will be given your score before being forced to reset and begin the process over. The random selection is just what it sounds like, a completely random set of problems. Once you decide on the types of problems, you are presented with an ever-changing set of math problems. Complete the set, get your score, and move on to another set. The only other thing of note here is that unless you are the type of person who enjoys having their eardrums shattered, it might be best to put the game on mute. When you use the controller to count up to the correct answer, the game decides it would be best to play a series of dings that gets louder. The higher the number goes, and ends with a celebratory jingle when you get the correct answer. And that's all the game has to offer, which isn't surprising given that it was one of the earliest releases for the 2600. There's not much to see here, unless you have a morbid curiosity about what the earliest days of edutainment looked like. Despite being edutainment, the box features some of that wonderful early Atari artwork, which in this case looks like a psychedelic trip through a zoo. Seriously, there's a lot going on here, and none of it is good. In what shouldn't come as a shock to anybody, the manual is extremely bare bones. I mean, the game is nothing more than glorified flashcards, so not a lot to cover here. The game did show up in some Atari catalogs over the years. However, the big thing with the game is that it was released under multiple different titles. Atari released another version called Fun with Numbers, and there was a Sears Telegames release called simply Math. Have you ever wanted to make your own video game? Well, if you were a kid in the early 1980s and wanted to make your own games, you either had to have a rich parent who could buy you a computer, or you had to drive yourself insane with the BASIC programming cart for the 2600. BASIC is the beginner programming language for computers, and is capable of creating simplistic programs. With it, you can create things like a simple clock program, or a Pong game with no sound. All you have to do is enter in complex code into your 2600. Now, this might not have been so bad if you had a keyboard and could type out what was required. However, back in the day, that would have been far too expensive. The solution? The keyboard controllers. These controllers had 12 buttons that were laid out like a phone keypad. Obviously not enough for a full keyboard, so they made it possible to connect two of them together to form a larger keypad area. Of course, we are still short 2 letters, which is why, in order to properly use the game, you have to use the 2600 console itself in order to access all of the features. And even then, it's a chore that requires you to sit right in front of the TV. While a lot of the Atari 2600 catalog can still be fully experienced and enjoyed today, basic programming is one that is relegated to the dustbin of history. The only people who should bother digging this out and messing with it are those who are computer programmers who want to experience what budding programmers in the early 80s had to make do with. That said, if you are interested in BASIC as a language, there are several websites that emulate it, which would be a much better option than this. The box artwork features some of that wonderful painted style, this time with an image of a futuristic man working at a complicated computer station. The manual is quite dense, which is to be expected given the complexity of the cartridge. The game also popped up in some catalogs as well. The biggest feature of the game was the keyboard controllers, which can be seen here. To try and help the budding programmer out, there was a set of overlays included with the game as well. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to see more Game Encyclopedia videos.